Hello, hello. Oh, yes. Okay, we're on. Good.
Testicle. That's what my dad used to say.
Don't start that.
Right, before we start, does anyone know who these two gentlemen are? Well, we have, is this Trevor? No, David. And we have got Trevor, very good friends of mine, and they are going to do your next talk about all things lovely about the Amiga. Or are we doing Atari ST maybe?
No, I think it's going to be Commodore and the Amiga. Yeah.
Okay, I will pass you over to them. Hope you enjoy their talk.
Yeah, Dave and I've done a few of these talks in the past, and sometimes we've been inebriated. We've done the talks. That was in Poland.
Mean sometimes, always.
We went to Ami Party in Poland, didn't we?
We did.
Go on, tell me what happened.
The trouble is that the Polish can drink you under the table, and you try to stay with them. It's incredible. The sad thing was that they had Ami Party this year. It was a break, obviously, for COVID. But the damn thing was on exactly the same weekend as Pixel Heaven in Warsaw. So, and Pixel Heaven being the much larger event, usually 6,000 or 7,000 people go through Pixel Heaven, whereas Ami Party maybe 30, 40, 50 or something. So we just could not be in two places at once, although I have to be honest, I was offered the opportunity to do both, but I didn't.
Well, I was in New Zealand, so I wasn't going to do either this year, because that's where I live. But the thing is that it's interesting to know how we got to meet, really, because back in 2015, we talk about retro computers now, and there's a great craze, and we all love it. But back in 2011, 2012, it just wasn't as vibrant as it is now. And I think the Commodore and Amiga communities are very vibrant today, despite some of the negativity you see on the forums. I think there's lots of really good things happening. Just come to a show like this, and you see so many crazy, wonderful developments. It's fantastic. Anyway, back in 2015, it was the 30th anniversary of the Amiga, and there were shows all over the world, but there were three really big shows that I remember, and I apologize to the other shows that I don't mention, but one was in the UK, and that was Steve Crittenden. Yeah. And his show was it was a charity event around children in need, and he was very worried that he wouldn't get anyone coming, so it was up at your neck of the woods, wasn't it?
Yeah, where I live, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. That was very successful, very small show, about 100 people, but we had yourself, Dave Haney, R.J. Michael, and a lot of the Brimble, a lot of the UK game developers. It was a really good show. The other one was in the States at the Computer History Museum in Mountain View in California, the spiritual home of the Amiga computer. That was unbelievable. We had anywhere between 700 and 1,000 people. I can't remember what the actual numbers were in the end. But we had a banquet. It wasn't a banquet really, but it was called a banquet dinner on the Saturday evening. There was a show. There was a first presentation of a cut-down version of the Viva Amiga movie, and we had nearly all of the High Toro team there that became Amiga Inc. A lot of Commodore original people. It was one heck of a show. Unfortunately, you couldn't make that.
No,
one.
I wasn't in the US one, no.
That was a brilliant show. But the third one was probably the first one of the three, and that was in Amsterdam. Why don't you say a bit about that, Dave?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting story from my point of view, because, after Commodore's bankruptcy, and I'm sure some of you know Colin Proudfoot, who was my co-MD at the Commodore UK, and we tried to manage and buy it. We wanted to buy the whole thing. And we raised, it was 94-5, we raised $50 million. But right at the last minute, we got cheated out of it by the ESCOM people who stole half of our investment. A long story I won't bore you with. Anyway, the bottom line is that after that, I was really bruised and battered, and I just wanted to get out of it completely. So I changed my whole life. I remarried. I married a Dominican girl, and I lived in Dominican for a year and a half, and then we went to the UK, got married. I took her to Australia. We had a restaurant for 5 years, a Mexican restaurant. There's a whole nother life story there. Anyway, I completely got out of the industry, and I'm back in the UK in 2015, and I got an email from these people I'd never even heard of. Marvin, Marcel, and Volker de Gans. And they were three guys, and there's another guy, Tim was, anyway, another guy who funded it, and they said, we're going to do an Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam. Would you be a guest speaker? I was completely shocked, and I thought, what on earth am I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. I had no idea. Anyway, I rocked up, and I walked into this place, and I was absolutely swamped. People, can I have your autograph? Can I have a selfie? It was like, who are they talking to?
David wasn't joking about being swamped. The venue was far too small. Yeah. There's about 450, 500 people all crammed into a tiny venue.
Yeah. But anyway, that introduced me back into the community, and it was such a wonderful sort of welcoming that I got from everybody. It was amazing. And the truth of the matter is that I had no idea that the work that I did, which, believe you me, I loved it. I adored working for Commodore. For 12 and a half years, I adored it. Even working through and with some complete and utter cretins. I loved it. I couldn't wait to get to work every day. But for me, it was like 19, 20 years ago. I'd forgotten all about it. But people just welcomed me so warmly and genuinely, and it was amazing. And then just a couple of months later in October, there was the one in Germany.
Well, yeah.
30 in Germany. Yeah.
I think what was interesting is that we met for the first time, really. Although you did admit to me that you were my dealer.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell that one?
Yeah, when we were at this AMI party in Chelm, it's C-H-E-L-M, but pronounced Chelm. And we opened up, and Trevor opened up, and he said, yes, I got him. He said, I'm an Amiga-holic. And I said, yes, and I was your dealer. Because that was just like that in those days. You bought them from the UK, didn't you?
I bought them from the UK, yeah. Well, the thing was, we got to be talking, and I write articles. I wrote lots of articles for Amiga Future magazine, both on the Amiga's history and classic, the companies that got involved in the Amiga and what happened to them after Commodore went bust. So I wrote all these articles, and I thought, I'm sure the readers of Amiga Future would enjoy to hear an article from David and Colin. So I spoke to them, and they agreed to actually, I'd do an interview with them, obviously on paper, and they'd give me the answers, and I'd add a bit more information. So I like to think I inspired you to your first book.
Well, to be honest with you, when I started doing the rounds of the Amiga community and Commodore community again, after all those years of a break, and I loved it so much. I like coming here. I love meeting new people. And I'm telling my stories because, with 12 and a half years at Commodore, right at the, front end of Commodore, there's a lot of stories, and some of them are funny, but some of them are unbelievable. So eventually, everybody, particularly Trevor, kept saying, why don't you write it? Why don't you write it? And I said, look, I'm not an author. I've never written a book in my life. But anyway, I got persuaded.
He still hasn't.
No. This is what I have to put up with, all the time. Anyway, so I ended up writing that first book there, Commodore, The Inside Story. And I'll be honest with you, when I finished writing my sort of part of it, and I read it back to myself, and I didn't like it at all. Because to me, it was more a story about David Pleasance than it was about Commodore. But then I thought, well, actually, I don't think it can be anything else because it's a story through my ears and my eyes. But I wanted it to be a much broader perspective than that. So I got in touch with loads of different people who worked at Commodore at the same time, either before me or after me, and got them all to write their own chapters, which I did not alter in any way, shape or form. But actually, that's not true. I did alter one chapter at the request of somebody who's downstairs. He didn't like what was written, so I did. In the reprint, I changed it. But basically, it tells you the whole story from every person's point of view.
If you haven't read it, the first half of the book, well, first of all, there's a fantastic foreword in the book. Yeah, right. So, yeah. But I'll let you find that out for yourself. The first half of the book is David's personal and Commodore story. The second half of the book is short stories from people who were who were with Commodore or closely associated with Commodore. So David's got them for sale downstairs. Nothing to do with me. But if you like to hear more, this is the book to read if you haven't read it already.
Yeah, for example, there's a chapter by Beth Richard, and she was the engineer who was in charge of developing the CD1200, which of course never got launched because Commodore went bankrupt before they had a chance to release it. But her chapter is all about many designed but very few released. And that used to happen all the time. Commodore used to change its management, probably more often than its damned underwear. You know, so Dave Haney would be working on something and a new head of engineering would come in and say, what are you working on? I'm doing such and such. No, I don't do that. Stop that and do this. And this happened over and over and over again. It's totally ridiculous, really. But that's a really interesting chapter from Beth. And in fact, anybody that's thinking of going to the Amiga 38 event in Germany in October this year, Beth is going to be there.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah.
So the first book came out, and I guess how well did it sell?
Oh, it's very well. I think somewhere in the region of 4,500 books, I think, was sold so far.
Excellent, right. Well, then David said, I'm thinking about writing, about what happened to the Commodore and Amiga technology after Commodore went bust. And I said, Dave, what do you know about that? And what did you say?
FA.
Right. So I said, well, look, please let me help you, because I've written so many articles over the last 15 years, and I've done a lot of research on the background of the companies and the people involved with Commodore, post-Commodore, and the highs, the lows, the successes, the failures. A lot of failures, not many highs. But I think we can make a good story of it. We can make it a story of survival and make it triumphant rather than the misery that we often hear about the Amiga.
Yes.
And fortunately, you said, okay, yes, that'll be good.
Yeah, so we agreed to collaborate, and our plan was to produce a book of the same size as the first one, roughly 350, 360 pages. And goodness me, did we get that wrong?
I knew it was wrong. So you have to blame me, because I knew we couldn't
You didn't tell me.
No, I didn't.
Anyway, the truth of the matter is that we reached the 350, 360 page mark, and we'd only gone from 1995 to 2005, and we've still got all those other years left to cover. Now, I made a very, very big mistake, and I blame only myself to blame, and that is that in years prior, there's a guy called Brian Bagnall who wrote books about Commodore, and what he did was he did a Kickstarter like I did, and then he released a volume 2 and a volume 3, but he just charged everybody the same amount of money again and again and again. And that was not my plan. My plan was to, just to write one book. So what I did was that when we announced volume 2, I said, okay, everybody, if you want your money back from the Kickstarter backing of volume 1, you get your money back. And 5 people actually asked for their money back. 1 subsequently paid anyway and said, I want it. So I lost 4 people. But I said, anybody else, you can have the book for half retail price, volume 2, because you backed volume 1. Now, of course, I never realized what was going to happen with the pandemic and everything and all the pricing going up. And the fact of the matter is that I nearly lost my backside by offering this book at £17.50. Now, on top of that, if that wasn't bad enough, last year I was very, very ill. In fact, I was in hospital for a while and had some surgery, which meant that I lost, in total, I lost about 3 months of productivity, which meant I missed the publishing deadline for Volume 2 for Christmas. I just missed it. Everybody, all the printers around the world were chock-a-block. They always are. From November through to the end of February, they're always chock-a-block full. Anyway, in the meantime, all the prices have gone through the roof. Anyway, here we are finishing Volume 2, except we got to 550 pages of Volume 2. And we have absolutely no choice. We have to produce a Volume 3. Absolutely no choice at all. I didn't give anybody a choice this time. I just said it's going to cost £29 if you back it, whatever. Anyway, cut a long, long story short. Volume 2 is literally about 11 days away. We ended up getting Volume 2 printed in India because they're a full digital printing outfit, but their price was more or less agreeable. The only consolation is that, or I should say the disadvantage is that it's 5 or 6 weeks by boat. And it's that literally I'm expecting delivery into my warehouse in Peterborough on the 28th of this month, so about 11 days from now. if it's on time, it should be. I also made a huge mistake when we shipped out Volume 1 because it had slipped my mind that we were no longer in the EU. So I shipped out all the worldwide books from the UK. My God, what a nightmare. So many books went into Germany and Italy and France, and the customs boys got it, and they didn't know what to do with it because previously books had not been customable. So, cut a very long story short, instead of contacting people and saying you owe customs £6, $10, whatever it is, come and pay and get the book, they hung on to them, and then eventually they just send them back. Now, that's bad enough, and it's in its own right because the cost of shipping is really expensive. Both books are over 1 kilo in weight. So I'm getting all these books back with a big stamp on the front saying return to sender. And that stamp is right on top of the name and address of the person it was sent to. And when you peel off that label, it ruins you can't see the name and address of the person you've sent it to. So I've got these books. I don't know where they've come back from. Complete another nightmare. Anyway, we've resolved that now. I've still got one come in a couple of days ago, still haven't got his books. I've just sent it to him. Because if they don't tell me, I don't know they haven't got it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, now the majority of books, all the books that are for non-UK are being shipped to Germany. They'll be in Hamburg on the 25th, or 26th, take 2 or 3 days to clear. And then from Germany, I've got in collaboration with people, they're going to pack and ship everything else around the world. Not only is there no customs problems, also it's a lot cheaper. For example, if I send one book from the UK to the US, it's £18.40. From Germany, it's 13 quid. So it does save the end user quite a lot of money. So our message to you is that if you're waiting for Volume 2, and I hope you are, if you aren't waiting for it, please order it now because it'll be here in a few days.
And Volume 3 is also finished. It's got to be printed, yeah. Yeah,
Volume 3, we again because of the amount of information that this guy kept on finding, so we had to keep making amendments because initially it was going to finish in 2022, and now of course it's finished in 2023. So he's added more to it. But anyway, it's had its final proofreading, and I think it's just done literally in the last couple of days. Done a complete final edit. I can tell you that the e-books for Volume 2 are already shipped out. All those people who ordered e-books from me have got them. And I've just got to make these 2 amendments that you came up with 2 days ago.
Mainly because it says 2022, and of course it's 2023.
Yeah, they're minor little things. Anyway, but the e-books for Volume 3 are done, except for these couple of little amendments. But we will then send off for shipping, for printing to India. So my guess is it's going to be somewhere around August, should be mid to late August, that we have Volume 3 ready. But they're all fantastic books. I'm not just saying it because they're our books. They're an amazing read.
I've got to say that because I wrote them, so that's okay. But what was really, I found was very important, is that people were willing to share, not only their good times, but their bad times with me. And so I was able to, get more of a personal story about the post-Commodore years and what happened to the technology, to the people, to their ideas, their dreams. And some come back. I mean, we've got, where is he? He's at the back there hiding. I mean, if you were at the earlier talk, Steve talked about, he's a hardware guy and he was disappointed when the Amiga wasn't taken seriously, and he's come back, he's come back into it. And his whole life now is the business he's running. Not his whole life, he's got kids and grandkids, but, his business life is what he's doing now, and it's something he loves doing. And it's interesting that when you look at the people involved with the Amiga and the Commodore, is that they really are still driving forward with clever ideas and
very much innovation. It's incredible.
But what I really like to see is the young people coming in. There's so many developers that we talked about technology triumphs in book 3. There's so many young developers that have come in who were never Amiga users, but they've come in and they've fallen in love with the technology and have re-implemented it in their own image or in their own ideas. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, absolutely is. I think Steve, is it Steve at the back there?
Yeah.
Steve is the guy that made me change something in the book. And I'll just tell you what that was. It's very simple. Steve had a meeting with Commodore just after I left Commodore UK. I went to Commodore Electronics Limited in Switzerland, which was the holding company for the whole group of Commodore. And I'd not been gone very long, and Steve had a meeting with a guy called Kieran Sumner, who used to work for me. And Steve had an idea about this Amiga 1500, which is an upgraded 500. And anyway, Kieran gave him short shrift, basically said, "You did that and I'll sue your ass," which was not something I ever would have said. But anyway, I got Steve wrote his story, and I got Kieran Sumner to write his chapter. And then Steve said to me, "What he wrote in there isn't true." So I did change it in the reprint, didn't I, Steve? I promised you I would, and I did change it. I just wanted to tell you that because there's the evidence that the story, the inside story, really is what happened, and you won't believe some of the things, some of the opportunities that Commodore missed, so on and so forth.
Anyway, it's Dave, first of all, I have to admit I'm not financially benefiting from these books. So, if you want to support these books, you're supporting Dave, and that's really good. I just wanted the stories to be told. I wanted to be told as factually accurate as possible through my lens. So it doesn't mean it is absolute truth, but it's as true as much as I could get it based on feedback and talking to the people involved. Okay, and based on research and published information. So if you haven't bought it and you want to find out what Volume 1's about, it's downstairs. You can buy it from Dave.
Yeah, it's half price today, so if you want to buy it, it's a very good deal.
Yeah. Volume 2, I enjoyed writing Volume 2. It adds a lot more colour, a lot more information from supplied by other people. And Volume 3 for me is a continuation, celebration of the people that are involved in Commodore and Amiga, particularly
Today,
Amiga.
these days, yeah.
So, but that's enough of the books. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah, well, I'm almost afraid to ask, but does anybody want me to talk about AGA and what happened there? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm not involved in AGA, so I'm going to let Dave tell his own story.
Yeah, I just think basically what happened is that I've had an idea for a very, very long time that I would really like to get all of the Amiga community around the world, and I meant truly on a global basis, under one umbrella. So I came up with this. The first concept was Commodore Amiga Global Alliance. And what I did was I went to various places and did a PowerPoint presentation of the basic concept of it so that I could tailor it to suit what people wanted. So if they gave me some ideas that I hadn't thought of, I would put them in. The very first place I showed it was actually in Italy. Passione Amiga magazine, they had an open day which I was invited to. And when I'd finished my presentation, they came up to me and said, David, you can't use a cargo. Because it must mean a load of shit, I think, is the one basic interpretation of it. So, and then I found out the same in Spanish, so I had to drop cargo. But I don't think Amiga would ever be as it is if it hadn't been for Commodore, so I wanted to put Commodore in there. Anyway, kind of very long story short, I went to loads of different places, and people, nearly everybody I went to, and I think maybe they were just being kind to me and were saying all the right things. Although having said that, lots of people signed up for it, literally signed up and paid some money over. The concept basically was it was an annual subscription. The first year was going to be £38, and for that there was loads and loads of goodies that you got worth a lot more than 38 quid, plus your year's membership. Okay, but the overall concept was that at least 65% of the money coming in was going to be reinvested back into the community for people who wanted to start a new project, software project or a hardware project, because it's very hard to get any funding at all. So we're not talking about big funding, just some seed funding to at least to help them. So my concept was you pay a little bit in, and then this is how we build and grow the community. Well, I launched the Kickstarter, and talk about getting slagged off. The toxic, really filthy comments that some people have sent about how I'm just a money grabber and I don't put anything back into the community and all this stuff, it's been horrendous. I cancelled the Kickstarter. I can't go ahead with it. Anyway, that's what happened. I stand that hand on heart that my concept was about growing the community and making it better. It wasn't about making money for myself at all. I'm not a rich man. I never have been a rich man. But everybody knows my commitment to the community. I go all over the world. Yes, I do get the airfares paid if it's a long distance, which is not wrong. But when I come to all of these events, I don't get asked for petrol money or anything like that at all. And I keep going around. Maybe I like to get
But
beaten
he
up.
will accept the odd drink. Not today, though, because
No.
he's driving back.
No, I am driving home tonight. I have to, but seriously, I mean, everybody who knows me, they know what my commitment is to the community. At 12 and a half years, I did so much for the Amiga and Commodore community. I did so much for them on a global basis, and then since I've been back in the community, I've given a lot. So all of these naysayers, most of them hide behind bloody pseudonyms, which gives you an idea of who they really are.
Well, let's concentrate on the positives, though, because and I know I think all of us, anyone that's involved in the media community, it can suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous slants, and so But actually, when you come to places like this, you find that most of us are just Amigans or Commodore guys and girls, and we support Commodore and Amiga, and I don't see why we can't do that. Everywhere I go, and I've said it many times before. You can say, "Oh, Amiga, yeah, preemptive multitasking, custom chipset," and they go, "Yeah, Denise, Buster, blah blah blah." Yeah, but we all know what we're talking about, and that's what I like about it. I can go anywhere in the world and say, I'm a Commodore and Amiga fan, and they say, "Oh, you must be mad," first of all. But secondly, if they've got any reference to it, they really do come alive. And I must admit, when I start talking about, as my wife said, I like people who are full of enthusiasm, and when they're enthusiastic about a subject or a topic, it really comes across. It really is like, "Oh yeah," and you're attracted to that. And I must admit, when I start talking about Amigas, I go the same way. So my wife said, "It's okay. It's all right to be enthusiastic. You are a bit strange. It's all right."
But the Amiga is your mistress.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm glad you got to say about that. But you do go to a lot of shows. I've seen you at lots of shows.
Yeah. And this one I was a bit tentative about coming, although Steve and the guys have known. Steve and I met just before I went to Australia in 1999. I think it was 1998 we met. I was at a car boot sale selling, and he bought a 64 from me. It reminded me of that. So we've known each other a very, very long time. So, and I love coming to this event. I've not missed one of these, irrespective of where I am in the world. But I was a bit tentative coming after this barrage of insults that I received over emails in the last few days. It's been horrific. It really, really has. But thankfully, everybody seems to be very welcoming, and thank you. Love you to bits, all of you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No.
Spoiled sport.
Well, it's interesting because some of us, we're Amiga enthusiasts. Some of us go a bit crazy, and I think Steve knows what I'm talking about. They put their money where their mouth is and invest lots of money into hardware and software development. And I've been involved in that for the last 14, 15 years, and I haven't made a penny actually. I've made quite a lot of loss, but never mind, that's another matter.
Sure.
But what's interesting is that, you do get I feel really, proud that I was involved in the Amiga 1 X1000 and the X5000. And I haven't given up on the A1222, which I'm meeting with Amiga Kit and A-Cube next week. And we should be putting the production in to go for the first run of the commercial version of the A1222. I'm really desperate to get that out because I put so much time, money, and effort and angst into that one. So I'm looking forward to that.
They put a lot of money into it, let me tell you, a lot of money.
But, these are things that you do because you want to drive something forward, and we call it next generation Amiga, but it's still retro next generation. But I'm so impressed by the community of makers and developers and companies that have come up with all these crazy ideas. Just go downstairs and look at some of the things that are going on. Things I never even heard of, and they're not in the book. I'm not doing a fourth volume.
No, thank God for that.
But it is really, I think it's a great time to be a retro computer fan. Me personally, Amigan, Apple. Sorry.
You swear at me.
But I suppose it's because, you talk about why you get involved in computing. You were the dealer. I did buy my first Amiga 4000, my first Amiga Commodore PET from Commodore UK, and my Commodore 64 from Commodore UK, and my Commodore 128 from Commodore UK, and my first, not my first Amiga because I was in the States then, but I think you were probably still there when I came back to the UK. When did you go to the States?
Oh, not to 92.
Yeah, well, that's when I came back, so 93.
So. The crazy thing is that you guys, I'm certain you don't know this, but when I joined Commodore when they were in Slough, June of 1983, and then we built this big factory place in Corby, and I rescued from the skip the royal warrant that Commodore had for pets, selling pets to the royal household. And I rescued it from the skip. And I'd forgotten, I managed to take a colour photocopy of it, but I gave the original to the computer centre in Cambridge, and so that's hanging up on their wall. And then I gave a copy of it to the Retro Computer Museum in Leicester. They've got the copy up on the wall.
You brought along a big certificate at the Commodore, the Amiga 30 in the UK. Was that the original or was that the copy?
That was the original.
Yeah, back in 2015.
Yeah. So I rescued it from the skip. Can you believe that? I mean, unbelievable.
Anyway, look, we've talked a lot. Has anyone got any questions? Any questions at all?
Just on the AJ story, I guess it's still very raw. It's only been a few days, so you haven't had much time to process. But do you think at some point there might be a way of doing it differently? A different angle and having another go at it?
Well, it's never say no, but I mean, it was so vitriolic. And I mean, but people were saying things, some complete and utter lies about me, which got nothing to do with the concept. I mean, if you don't like the concept, that's okay, no reason why. But you can't, then slag me off about all sorts of lies, which are actually libelous lies, really. So I'm still a bit bruised about it. I mean, I still believe in the concept. I mean, what I didn't put in the Kickstarter was because I believed it was too soon, but I had two other goals that were part of the whole AGA process. And I mean, I've spoken to Mike here a lot about this, is that it's something that we share, is that we'd like to set up a not-for-profit Commodore Amiga Foundation. And to make that somewhere where we archive all the material, and my concept is that we tie in with all the museums around the world, and they all have a little section which is based on that not-for-profit foundation. And we have a Hall of Fame, and everybody that was involved in anything to do with each of the processes. And the third thing I wanted to do was I am absolutely astonished that nobody has ever made a full-length movie about the Jack Tramiel story. I mean, there's a guy who was rescued from Auschwitz by the American military, goes to America and joins the military to say thank you, opens up a little typewriter repair shop in the Bronx and builds a billion-dollar corporation. The story is phenomenal. It's got everything in it that you want in a story, with pathos, and there's evil, and there's love and romance, all sorts of things. Now, I know that AJ can never raise the millions and millions that it would take. But what I do believe we could have raised is what I call a war chest. And that would be an amount of money, I don't know, $250,000, $300,000, $400,000. And with that money, then you get a team of the right people to go to Hollywood and negotiate a deal. Or if you can't get a full-length Hollywood movie, at the very worst, you should have a series of television documentaries about it, because the story is worth telling. So that was all part of my whole concept. And I don't think anybody can argue about that. The whole dream, we should be able to deliver that.
I think we've got you in your Commodore story. You had quite a good section. The first part of the movie was all about Jack Tramiel and his son, giving an idea of how Commodore was founded and developed. I thought that was quite an interesting part of the film. Probably the most interesting part of the film, to be honest. Yeah.
So yeah, so when we did the Commodore story, we, obviously Jack Trammell wasn't around, but fortunately it was very difficult. We managed to get in touch with Leonard Trammell, and we got invited to go around to his house, and which is a privilege. I've got to say that. And through like talking to him for quite a while, we talked about all different aspects, and then it was like, yeah, we need to talk about Auschwitz. We need to talk about where Jack came from and how he did what he did, And it was quite an emotional. It was quite an emotional time to actually talk to him about it, and to be there in his house, and there's family pictures on the wall, everything, and for him to actually talk in detail. And we don't put everything out there, but yeah, I mean, the story is such a strong story, and I think for the sake of Jack and what he did creating Commodore, I think it does need to be told.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Yes.
Hi guys. Again with the AJ, I mean, you spoke about this last year, didn't you, David? About
Yes.
getting this together. And do you feel that maybe the criticisms you received was more around the way it was presented rather than the concept itself? Is that something you've learnt to maybe have a look at it again in the future?
Well, you're probably right, but from my point of view, I mean, I spent a long time designing the Kickstarter itself, and I put it together in a way that I thought was very easily explainable, with a lot of information in there, a hell of a lot of information in there. I don't know any other way I could have presented it differently. It's just that what I found annoying is everybody saying that website, that portal that you want to build, aj.directory, it already exists. I'm sorry, it does not exist. There is nowhere where all the information is in one place. Yes, you can use Google and you can find places all over, but there is nowhere. And I said, send me the link to anywhere that has what I've got in my mind. And I had 5, 6 originally webmasters all around the world who are going to build this portal for us. They've actually already started, which is unfortunate. But so I said, okay, first of all, show me anywhere that has what we're trying to put together with aj.directory, and nobody has. And then I said, okay, now where else is there where people are actually putting funding back into the community? And there is nobody sent me a link with anything in it. And what does that tell you? It tells you that I think if the concept is right, if I delivered it badly, and I'm a pretty good marketeer, and I don't think I did it badly, but I don't know. It just hit at the wrong moment. But I stand by my words that people who hide behind pseudonyms and have got false profiles, and all they do is condemn and condemn and condemn. I really shouldn't be offended because they're cretins that do not deserve to be in this community. I mean, when I talk to people like you face to face, there's no lies. I don't lie to anybody. I'm absolutely completely open. And I went to so many places with the concept on a PowerPoint, and I made changes that people recommended. But get this, all right? I mean, there were several people who I did presentations to who said, where do I sign? Paid me £38, and I've given them a certificate. And then as soon as I put the Kickstarter up, we don't want to get involved in this. Well, what part of it didn't you understand? You paid your £38, you got your certificate. What have I missed? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think, David, that I think the Amiga community generally, Commodore and Amiga community is generally really, really good. There's always going to be a few people that make a lot of noise, and there's a wonderful. I'm trying to think. Is it Theodore Roosevelt? One of the Roosevelts who said it's the man in the arena speech, where he says, I admire the man in the arena, the guy that's in there fighting, got dust, got scars. He'll fail and fail again, but at least he tries, rather than I can't remember the words, rather than the cold-hearted people or whatever it is that sit on the sidelines and tell him how he should have done it better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people criticise, I always think of that. I think, well, yeah, you do it. You go and do it. You put your money in. You put your effort in. You do it. Don't just sit back and criticise. So anyway, so that's how I handle the criticism, because I get criticism as well, and I just, you know, it's water the ducks back now. So anyway, any more questions? Something positive to end on. Come on.
What's next, David?
It's a good question. I honestly don't know. I really don't know, because I was so shocked with the response from AGA, because that to me was going to be, that was my legacy. That's what I want to leave behind. You know, I had a good career with Commodore. I think I delivered pretty well, and I wanted to leave AGA as a legacy, which I think the community deserves this. So the truth is, I honestly don't know. What I am doing is, I've had a lot of interest from people that are translating certainly the first book into different languages, and we'll probably end up doing Vultures to Vampires in different languages as well, which is good because all the work's been done and somebody else has to do the work for that, but I can obviously sort of manage it, if you like. But in terms of what's next for me, I honestly don't know. I really haven't had a chance to get the cobwebs off, if you like.
Well, for me, if you want to know what's next for me, I think it's a beer tonight. So, so if everyone's around, I'd like to have a drink with you. I think we have a question from over there.
Yeah, just a quick question. You talk about management buyout. What would you actually have done? Where would you want to see Amiga now? You know, a timeline, if you like.
Okay, we need about 10 minutes or so. I'll give you the overview of what our business plan was, and we spent months designing this business plan. Essentially, let's take the Commodore brand. The Commodore brand I always saw as being a brand that could sell anything with a plug on it, and I mean anything. I mean a toaster, an iron, a kettle, whatever. And why? Because it was a well-known brand name that you could get into distribution all over Europe. We already had the distribution channels. Now, that would be something that you'd license, 2.5% or whatever license. But the key to that, of course, would be quality control. Because there are, you know, think about it, there's thousands and thousands of Chinese companies whose name is Honky Conky Shonky or whatever it might be in Chinese. They've got no chance of getting their products, no matter how good they are, into the marketplace. So that, for me, was a really big opportunity to license it. So not only would you license it to them, but then you'd say, okay, how about we sell it for you? Because we've got our sales team going into all of these shops anyway, so we would sell it for you. So we're getting a royalty coming in, and you've got your commission coming in from sales. And that costs very little to run. So it was a genuine good money income-making idea.
So
That would fund loads of other things, okay? So then we're talking about the Amiga. Obviously, the Amiga, ultimately, you cannot continue developing the Amiga and keep it backwards compatible. Eventually, it would have to stop. But what we came up with was a way to add longevity to the Amiga. And we went to Germany. We found this company called Mycronic, and we got them to design a mini tower case. And the concept was that it would fit any motherboard from any Amiga. And the idea was that if you had a 500 and you wanted the 1200, you'd go into the dealer and you'd buy a case, and he would swap your PCB out, and you could keep your peripherals and so on and so forth. And to support that, we were going to sell PCBs on their own, motherboards on their own, so that would keep the longevity. You can upgrade as and when you could. That was called Amiga Infinity.
Which is, in fact, exactly what Amiga Technologies did once they took control. They sold boards. They licensed a whole bunch of companies to create tower systems. I mean, they followed on that idea. And in one company even did an expandable tower system called Infinitive. Yeah, it wasn't very good, to be honest.
No, that was Mycronic, of course. And of course, because we didn't win the management buyout, they produced something which, in their own words, was just not up to standard. We would never have allowed that plastic stuff. But subsequently, I think they produced a better quality thing. But the concept was the concept was ours, and that was what we were going to do.
Using the Commodore name, I mean, the Commodore story is even more convoluted when you go into it. But the Commodore gaming was a joint venture. I mean, they did actually create, and the Commodore BV, they did create a bunch of licensed Commodore products, which were never very successful.
Yeah, but again, I mean, the thing is, they did everything half-cocked, didn't they? Be honest about it.
Well, no, I think they really had. I mean, like most companies don't go into business to make losses. They had ideas, they had plans. They just didn't work out, for whatever reason. And there was a Commodore, what was it? Horrible name, Commodore Gravel, which was
It was a rough patch.
Oh well, it was just not very good, and the Commodore directed DC TV, Commodore joystick, which was more successful, but that was not really Commodore. That was Ironstone and various other people, although it was licensed.
Yeah, I mean, also part of our business plan was the name CBM. The CBM at one time was as valuable as IBM. It really, really was. So the idea we would license CBM out to people who were making PCs, and even ESCOM, for example. If we'd have got it, ESCOM could have licensed the CBM name, and that could have been their higher range of products than ESCOM.
They did produce some Commodore laptops. I've got a couple of them. Seriously, Pentium laptops. So they did try to. I think the whole computer industry changed with the cheap PCs from the Southeast Asia.
Sure.
And I think that, I mean, I think it would have been tough being a unique manufacturer unless you had a special edge. What would have been your special edge, you think, for Amiga? Going forward?
Well, the special edge was the technology that Commodore was developing that ESCOM didn't even look at. They were working on a project which is codenamed Ombre. And there was a guy called Dr. Ed Hepler who spent 2 years designing this. It was basically a PA RISC-based core to which they added a 3D rendering engine, Blitter chip. It had 5.1 surround sound stereo, which in 94.5 was state-of-the-art. And he cobbled together and showed me in software what it could do. And I've not seen anything since that comes even close to it.
Well, we've had this discussion
yes,
before.
Yes, I know he doesn't agree.
Yeah, I don't agree. I do agree. I think it was so far ahead of its time, but in 5 or 10 years' time, Commodore would have to change again. So,
it was another step.
But at that time, it was certainly ahead of its time.
Yeah, but can you imagine ESCOM not even looking at it? I mean, I met up with Dr. Ed Hepler about a year and a half afterwards, no, a bit longer than that. And he said, David, I was broken, because he said, that was my life's work. And I thought it was going to be so fantastic.
We had a local ESCOM shop, like literally in our town.
Yeah.
PCs are everywhere, and the Amigas were just stuck in the corner.
Yeah.
And I said to them, get this thing out, people will buy it.
When I went to Commodore US, which was in January of 1992, I had to go to the CES show first because we had a stand there. But my very first day in Commodore Westchester, I went to see the engineers. And we had 7 Amiga engineers. There was a few junior engineers who worked for them, but there was 7 Amiga engineers, and there was 40 PC engineers in January 1992. And why? I'll tell you why. Because Mehdi Ali had just recruited a new head of engineering, a guy called Bill Sidness, whose claim to fame was the PC Junior, which is considered the biggest flop of all time. And he gave jobs to 40 of his mates. Why in God's name would anybody need engineers for PCs in 1992? We had 40 of them. No wonder Commodore went bankrupt.
Come on, let's have a positive ending note, not a negative one. Come on.
It's great to have you here. Part of the continuity in time in the last 10, 15 years, at least 10, since Amiga 30, it's thanks to you that we see a continuity from event to event, I think, also.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Thank you so much.
Through the ups and downs, all of us, but
Yeah.
you're just the same as 10 years ago.
You should see the photo in the attic.
Anyway, just to finish on a positive note, you may or may not want this, but I happened to find a whole lot of CDs that my 2 sons have got their own band. This was a previous incarnation, but it's got some nice music on there. Please come down and get one off me for free down at my table. Stick it in your car, and I think you'll enjoy listening to it. So that's as positive as I can be.
We've got another question over there.
Oh,
Yeah.
all I want to say, I'll just shout it up, is
No, I mean, one place I remember is Helm,
Yes.
Poland, Army Party, and these two were like rock and roll stars. So,
Yeah, but it helped when you drink about 10 Stalin's Tears, which is their homemade sort of
Liqueur.
and they make you drink it at 9 in the morning.
Yeah.
But it was good. It was good.
was
That
good.
was just for starters, yeah. One last question then.
So,
What's happening with you, Trevor, going forward?
Oh, me. Okay, right. Well, I think at Kickstart you'll see something new coming out. That's coming out. I'm not sure whether it's Amiga Kit or A-EON. I still have to have the discussion. We will, all things being well with our meeting next week, we'll be pushing ahead with the A1222. It's got to go out. I want it out. I spent too much time and effort and money. It's going to be out. I don't care. It's out, right? So I want that out. And then I think we've got to look...
When do I get bored so I can try?
when it's out. But then I think, we need to look at what's next. What's next, really what's next? Because there's so many clever ideas at the moment. I mean, you've got emulation, you've got FPGAs, you've got, software emulation, hardware emulation. What is next? Are we staying, is next generation still next generation retro? Is it next generation? I don't know. So I think we need to talk about that more. And to be honest, I just want to continue the journey that I've been on since I got my first Commodore PET.
continue the ride,
Yeah.
the roller coaster ride.
Which to me, I think it keeps you young, Dave. It keeps you.
It hasn't worked.
Because in my more serious role, I work with young companies, young founders, help fund startup businesses in New Zealand. And we get some fantastic, crazy ideas and some wonderful things I get involved with. And that gets me up in the morning. But what gives me my real passion still, and my wife, she understands this and she knows, is my Amiga obsession.
So are you going to get your ankles tattooed red?
Well, I never did that. I never had some bowling balls. Yeah, but
Well, you've had some balls, that's for sure. You've had a lot of balls, my friend.
No, I've got a question, though, for the audience, right? And it's one that I've only come to realize recently. Is it a boing ball or a Boeing ball? Come on, I want to know.
It's Boeing.
Boing.
It's Boeing. Because of
Boing.
the sound.
I know. But I've heard Boeing balls and boing balls, and I've heard all sorts. So boing, because of the
could call
boing
it a
sound.
Boeing 747.
So from now on, I'm going to call it a boing.
Boing,
ball.
yeah, that's what it is. A
fair
boing, boing. I've got one more thing to say, is that Mike just asked me what's next for me. Anybody got anything for me? Any jobs I can do? If I can help you in any single way at all, I need some income, and I'm available, and I think I can be useful at times. So think of me if you need anything. I'll be glad to try and help.
Yeah.
Whether you pay me or not is up to you.
Yeah. And now, just to finish off, when do you hope Volume 2 will be out in the wild?
Well, Volume 2...
It's out already, isn't it?
Yeah, Volume 2 is out in e-book form already, but Volume 2, I plan to ship it the first 10 days, after the 3rd of July, because 1st and 2nd of July we're at Kickstarter 01 in Nottingham, and then so from the 3rd to the 10th of July is when all the UK books will be shipped out.
And will we have some for sale at Kickstart 01?
Well, if the boat's on time, we will. As I said, it's very close. It's on the 28th, it's supposed to be delivered to me. But if that does, yes, of course.
And Volume 2 does reveal some interesting information that's never been released before, so I'm quite keen to see how
No spoilers.
There is some very juicy bits in Volume 2 that this guy dug out. Pardon? Yeah, Amiga kit off. You hadn't thought of that, did you?
No, it's interesting. It just adds to the whole story of Commodore and the Amiga. So
Let's try and register that domain name, Amiga kit off. I like that.
And as I say, Volume 3 should follow fairly shortly afterwards.
Yeah, my best guesstimate is probably August, end of August, something like that. That'll be Volume 3 will be out. Yeah, because we literally haven't sent it away to the printers, but we will. Because of the way that the printing prices, because paper went up and fuel's gone up, so we found these printers in digital printers, so that we know the quality's fine in India, but because the payoff is that it's 5 or 6 weeks by sea to get it shipped to our target audience.
Now, my last comment is, I know I wrote nearly all the books. If you don't like them, David wrote them. If you do like them, it was me, okay?
I'm telling you, he's written probably 99.9% of all the content in this book. I've just tried to do all the management side of things.
You've done all the hard work.
Well, I don't know about that, but it was supposed to be a co-authored, but this man's done all of the work, really. But it's a good partnership. We've been friends for a long time, and the thing is that once you trust somebody and they don't screw you over, that's why we tend to get on so well together, and I'm very proud to be Trevor's friend, to be honest with you. Very proud.
Well, we're all Amigans, so I'm displeased we're all Amigans together, okay?
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
I think on that sentiment, we probably need to wrap up.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Trevor,
very much,
David,
guys.
thank you very much indeed.
Don't forget these.